All right, here we are again today. A special guest, Mr. Paul Puey, CEO and co-founder of Edge Wallet. It's great to actually get the chance to talk to you today, sir.
Well, pleasure. Thanks for having me on the show. Happy to chat more things crypto, Bitcoin, and whatnot, and probably privacy as well.
Yeah, I'm a privacy advocate as well. And I was telling you a little bit before we got started here. I got the chance to see you speak in at WAGME. We're all going to make it in Miami this year, and
Cool.
your speech really resonated with me. So I wanted to invite you on and just pick your brain a little bit.
Cool. Yeah, no, that was gosh, almost a year ago. Early this year, I think. So like
Yeah, it was.
8 months ago. I think that was like a panel on what was it? Adoption and on and off ramping and whatnot. So
yeah, it was a good panel. But yeah, just jump into it here. I'm always like curious when I talk to somebody who's in the crypto space, and you've been in for a super long time as well. So I know you were in Nvidia. Maybe you could just tell me like a little bit about your background, because it's an interesting background.
it is definitely a varied background. My wife likes to say, like, which Paul are you referring to, in the sense that I've had multiple different lives during the time that she's known me. Yeah, so I think most relevant to people listening, was when I had started working at Nvidia. That was like my first technical, actually no, it was my second technical job in the kind of general engineering industry. First at Chromatic Research, which built GPUs back before they were called GPUs. And then not long after that was a very short stint. Then after that, Nvidia. I was there for just a little under a decade, like 7-8 years, building software. I would say hardware, but I wasn't really a hardware engineer, even though I was trained. I definitely worked closely with a lot of hardware engineers to help develop, obviously, faster, more beautiful graphics chips, right? Well, the chips aren't beautiful. The stuff they make, obviously, is the goal is making the imagery beautiful. And relevant to today, I think right before I had left, one of the last things I worked on were some of the APIs that enabled researchers and a lot of PhD students, enabled them to do GPU computing, general purpose computing on a GPU. So that's where they took algorithms and execute them on all of the parallel processing that GPUs have, which, is primarily used for AI today. That's why Nvidia is now like the biggest company in the world, is because that exact thing that I was last working on is now massively adopted. Although I'm pretty sure the work that I did is shelved and it's now all shiny new, technology. But that was my first foray into tech, and what I like to call like difficult tech. Like, graphics is complicated. Chips, semiconductors are complicated. And I think from there, I transitioned into small business at first, right? Completely exited technology altogether, other than doing maybe some spreadsheets instead of small business and working QuickBooks and, maybe writing a whole bunch of macros on Excel. Other than that, I was just not an engineer at all, until I discovered crypto. Bitcoin just completely fascinated me on all levels, both its empowering capability. And I like the fact that Bitcoin pissed off the people I didn't like. The people and the industries and the governments, the people that I felt like were misleading the public are the ones that upset the most. And so, right, it very much aligned with my ideals. And then it got surrounded by a lot of the people that are also solving hard problems, concurrency systems, cryptography, hard math. And I was like, wow, this is kind of like the second industry of what I call hard engineering, where I get to interact with some really smart people. And I felt like the dumbest guy at Nvidia, I'll be honest. But that's where you want to be, right? You want to be the dumbest guy in the room. And I felt like that when I was at Nvidia. Luckily, they definitely wanted me there, so it was great. And then now, in a similar fashion, I feel that way when I'm surrounded by a lot of these really sharp cryptographers and concurrent systems experts, distributed systems experts, and I learn a lot from them. And so that's, I don't know what that was, like a 3-minute, not rant, but a little storyline of what eventually got me into the cryptocurrency world.
Yeah, just real quick before, are you like, do you consider yourself a crypto anarchist? Or are you an ANCAP, or what is, I mean, I don't know if you want to talk about that or not.
I'm happy to talk about anything. So I guess the hard part is I agree with a lot of anarchists and libertarians and ANCAPs and all the different rough categories. but I think the big challenge is that I'll have disagreements as well. Just like you can agree with Democrats and also disagree with them, and agree with Republicans and also disagree with them. And so I found that I don't know if I have a home within all the different titles of people's political leanings. I would say that I'm far more aligned with far more of the vision of the libertarian and anarchists than I am with the kind of bulk of what like the traditional left and right, Republican Democrats tend to be aligned with. So I'm much more aligned, but I'll get into debates and arguments, and they're like, "You statists," I'm like, okay, great. That's a way to end an argument without really getting anywhere, So very aligned. I'll say that I'm mostly aligned with anyone that believes in a more of a freedom-ish movement, for sure.
Yeah, I would call myself probably a private property maximalist, but yeah, I was interested where you stood there. Okay, so what year did you leave Nvidia? Did you basically go straight into Bitcoin then, or was it like a little gap?
Yeah, no, I left Nvidia in 2005, so this is a while ago. Gosh,
okay.
Years, holy smokes. Yeah, in 2005, and it was actually for health reasons. I'm a bit of a workaholic. You can ask my wife, like she knows that when I get into something, I go 150% into it. Pretty much every job I've had, I've gone 150% into it. Like there's just no shortage. And so I just worked myself to death, and I had like repetitive strain, wrist, neck, all the typical issues you get from overuse on a computer. And so I just had to take a ton of time off to rehab and recoup. And when I then needed to go back into the workforce, using a computer wasn't really that appealing, obviously coming off of that injury. And so I just worked in small business. I, helped, I co-owned and helped manage a restaurant, which was a combination bar, nightclub, for also health reasons. I went to a climbing gym a lot, and I actually got into outdoor climbing. I then started to do guiding, and then I worked at a climbing gym. Admittedly, being the tech guy at a climbing gym means you also do a lot of the technical stuff. So there was some minor IT that I did, and setting up of systems, point of sale and whatnot, before I then discovered Bitcoin. And so that wasn't until like 2013. So was that like an 8-year gap where I was primarily in small business during that entire time. But admittedly, that one thing I didn't mention earlier in my like history intro was that being in that space, like the non-technical space, is part of what really aligned me to Bitcoin when I discovered it. When I was working at the restaurant bar, back in, I was like 2006, 7, 8, 9, or 7, 8, 9, 2007, 8, 9. I was the guy in charge of money at, one point in my time there. And gosh, like you work at a bar, a ton of the money is cash, at least back then, right? A ton of it was cash. But of course the credit, and you actually wanted people to use credit card, even though it cost you a ton, right? Because dealing with cash was a horrible nightmare. Like I remember filling a backpack with like $20,000 worth of cash to deposit it in the bank. And I would do that every Monday. It was just like, Monday was the day we were closed. You'd count bills galore of all this cash, wet bills that, were on a bar counter. And like, this sucks, right? I remember one day I was biking over to the bank, and I took my dog with me, and I did the idiotic thing of holding the leash with one hand while I was trying to bike, and he would trot alongside. This is a 120-pound dog. He decided to just hit the brakes, and I went flying over the handlebars. Backpack spilled open, and a bunch of cash came out of the thing. And this is in the middle of Golden Gate Park. And I was like, okay, scoop everything in, right? Get to the bank as soon as possible before people know that I'm carrying like $20,000 in cash. And so I'm like, something's got to be better than cash. Okay, well, credit cards, great. So I don't have to deal with that. But you're charged with, a lot of purchases think, 3 to 4% is what you're charged. They don't know what the chargebacks are. And if you do the math on all the chargebacks, especially, a business like a nightclub bar where you can't see people's IDs really well and try to verify, is this really their card? Is that signature match? Everything's just so fast. In that scenario, you get a lot of fake cards. And yeah, if you add the chargebacks, it was easily more like 5 to 6% that you're paying. And so you're like rocking a hard place. Do I deal with cash, which sucks, or do I deal with cards where you're just getting reamed, in fees? that was part of like, oh my God, this Bitcoin thing makes sense, you know? And then at the climbing gym I worked at, I dealt with PCI compliance, where as a merchant that accepts credit cards, your entire system that you use to accept credit cards, the card swiper you use, the software, the method, the training of your staff on how you handle the actual card material, and as well as your Wi-Fi, your internet connection, PCI compliance has like 300 rules, and you have to check, hey, do we comply with that rule or do we not, or can we not? And in the process of renewing our PCI compliance, I went and filled out a 300 question form, and about 60% of it, we had to say, there's no way for us to comply or we go out of business. And ironically, we got approved. And we're like, wait, how did we pass? Right? Like, all through growing up, if you got 60% of the questions wrong, usually you don't pass. But really, it ends up being, well, okay, you could still take credit cards, but if anything happens that's due to the 60% that you said we can't comply, then you as a merchant are 100% liable. You pay the full cost of whatever that fraud might have been. And so I guess this is the way the world works. So once again, another long 5-minute description of like, well, all of that history and what I had done, like non-technical, that, you know, when I did not jump directly into crypto, is part of the reason why I really resonated with what Bitcoin brought to the world from at least a payments point of view.
That's what I'm trying to get to here. When did you? I appreciate that backstory. When did you? I just looked. That's what I was looking to see. It looks like you beat me by a month on X. 2009. You were there in May. So did you come across? Well, I know you didn't. You said you didn't find Bitcoin until 2013, but do you remember where you found it? Because that's a question. I found it very early. So people ask me that, and I'm curious. Like, do you remember the moment you found it?
Found Bitcoin?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, for sure I do. I remember I subscribed to a blog of a kind of like a Wall Street, I don't know what you call him. He was a Wall Street investor, and he had a blog, and he would post what his trades were. This is my percentage of my portfolio. He said he listed every single stock, and not how much he had, but the percentage allocation. At the time, I had just come out of working at Nvidia, so I still had some stock. I don't have any today, so please don't think that I'm like a trillionaire. Right? I had to let go of a lot of it just because like I couldn't work. Right? So I sold a lot of stock just to be able to survive. And so I followed him, and then one day he had a blog article. I just said, I'm putting some Bitcoin in my portfolio. He didn't say what it was. He didn't say why. He just said the word Bitcoin, and he put like a few percent, like 3% of his portfolio was in Bitcoin. I'm like, what the hell is that? I couldn't find it on my E-Trade account. And so I said, well, let's do some research. And boy, then boom, down the rabbit hole, never came out of it. All right. I started asking friends and family, like, you guys heard of this? You guys heard of this? You guys heard of this? You know, whatnot. And yeah, I bought like maybe $500 of Bitcoin at the time. And then I started using it. Yeah, I just wanted to use it in every way, shape, and form. I bought some coffee from some guy in South America that was going to different coffee farms. I remember it took a month for him to ship these beans over to me. We had all these little stickers from, you know, all the different post office services that it had to go through to get to me. I went on various websites where, I mean, some of it was like some gambling websites where you can do like dice games.
Satoshi Dice or something?
Not Satoshi Dice. I never got into Satoshi Dice. There was one called like Just Dice that one of the guys in the meetup, local meetup here in San Diego, had mentioned. And so I looked at it, played around with it. You know, didn't get too far into it, but I was like, oh, this is interesting. It's super simple, no account, send some money comes right back at you. And I just got as involved as I could, helped with an existing meetup that was already existing here in San Diego. I started attending. 2 to 3 people would show up, you know, then, you know, the bull run in 2013, that 2 to 3 became 5, 10, 12, 30 people. And then I started helping organize the meetup as well. And that same group is still around today, and I'm one of the main organizers of the meetup as a separate thing that I spend my time on outside of Edge, because community is huge. I really love getting together with like the in-person local communities, connecting with people. And that's part of what I love about this industry. It's not just a job, but it's a community.
Yeah, that's one of the things I need to work on. I'm like, I'm apprehensive to get out there, but when I do, I really enjoy it. So I need to do more. Yeah. So when you launched Edge, it was called Airbitz. You guys actually, I was doing some research. So you guys launched in 2014. That was the same year that Mount Gox collapsed. Did you launch? Do you remember? Did you launch after Mount Gox collapsed, or was it?
No, it was after Mount Gox collapsed. I remember because we had raised a little bit of bootstrap funding, at the very beginning of 2014. Mount Gox collapsed and all sorts of things went wrong. Obviously, like right before that was like Silk Road got shut down. Mount Gox collapsed and Charlie Shrem was arrested, put in prison. It was just like 2014 was just a grind down, and there went a lot of the money that we had as investment because we got it in Bitcoin, right? And then the value just kept grinding down through all of 2014, almost all of 2015. Like it was rough. Like it was the worst time to launch a startup in Bitcoin. Like the fact that we're here today is a testament to some like really high resilience of our team, because those were, I would call it like some of the absolute darkest days of our company. Within a year after we launched, a year after the company started, we had launched the very end of 2014, and just everything was just going downhill, right? But we managed to survive and build out of that, and come out, mostly unscathed.
Yeah, it's super awesome that you made it through that. I commend you on that for sure. There's been, and honestly, not just that one, but I mean the bear markets before we really reached like the mainstream. I feel like we're a mainstream thing now. We're not like on the fringe as much anymore. That's something I also want to talk to you about. Is like it's impressive that you guys made it through that. So let's talk about the state of Bitcoin real quick.
Sure.
So I kind of feel like this conversation's brought us there a little bit. What is your personal opinion on it? We talked a little bit about governments already. I think we both are probably distrustful of the state.
Can agree on for sure.
Yeah. Okay. What do you think about governments getting involved in Bitcoin? And have we won, or is this by becoming the cool kids on the block, I guess, or have we lost?
We've neither. We've neither won nor lost yet. Now, I'm not against governments going and getting into Bitcoin, right? Obviously, it's an asset. It's censorship resistant, so I shouldn't be able to censor a government, and no other government should be able to censor another government if they want to acquire and hold it. And so from a hodling, use it as a digital gold, that narrative of Bitcoin has won. Now, the real question is, how powerful is that narrative of Bitcoin versus Bitcoin, the payment method, right? Bitcoin, the unit of account, right? All the different asset properties of money, right, start to come into play. And from the viewpoint of store of value, it does feel like it's quote unquote won that. But the question is, does that mean that the entire reason for Bitcoin's existence has won? And I would say no, Bitcoin hasn't won, because as a store of value, you are an investment for whoever wants to buy and hold it. It's an investment. Number go up, sell it. Number go down, buy it, trade it, hedge against inflation. It's just like, it's the digital gold, but gold never disrupted governments, right? Governments disrupted gold, not the other way around. And when I say disrupted gold, they turn gold from the method by which we pay into just the thing you stick into, well, you hope that they stuck into Fort Knox, right? Yeah. And then claimed, okay, this is back in the dollar, and then you sever that claim. And easily the same thing can happen with Bitcoin, where it's like, okay, we have Bitcoin and it's helping secure the dollar, but at the same time, well, is it? Because, well, how much Bitcoin do they really have? And also how much debt is there in the dollar versus how much Bitcoin is owned? It can help probably the smallest of governments, but a debt the size of the US, and how much money they've printed, it's not likely going to make much of a dent. And at the end of the day, it hasn't won. It's not enabling any level of economic freedom that it was intended for. And if you look at the value of store of value assets like gold, that's in what's gold at now? Maybe a little over. I remember when I first got into Bitcoin, it was like 7 trillion.
Actually, I just saw this yesterday. I think it's, you're not going to believe this probably, but it's 20 trillion now.
And that makes sense, because I know when I first got involved, it was like 413, like $1,200, and it's like hitting 3,000. So that sounds about right.
I'm pretty sure it's about 20 trillion.
Sure.
And Nvidia is right behind it, so it's catching up.
And so, sure, about 20 trillion. And if
Yeah.
you think that that is like, hey, that's how Bitcoin wins, it replaces gold. Well, what's the market cap of dollars? Well, it depends how you define it, M1, M2, or M3. At the minimum at M1, you're looking at 60, 70 trillion dollars. So you've well eclipsed gold from the viewpoint of the market cap, which is how much people are willing to utilize the dollar, and how just the utility of the dollar has that much in circulation, and it still exists. It hasn't collapsed, right? $60 trillion market cap versus 20, and 20 is only recent for gold. That it hadn't hit 20 for a long time. That starts to beg the question: have we won? No. But if we become a payment method, that's super disruptive, right? Because now you bring about the economic freedom to transact. People can now transact freely, no matter where they are in the world, no matter who you are, how rich you are, poor you are, how rich you are, depending on the fees. So as long as the fees are low, you can utilize the system. So I think that's the moment when we've won, is when I think we were like 70, 80% won once there is pretty broad adoption of Bitcoin as a payment method. And then we've 100% won when Bitcoin or some other crypto ones, I'm not a Bitcoin maxi here, but some cryptocurrency other than a stablecoin aside, right? Some cryptocurrency becomes a unit of account. Now you know you've won, right? You're pricing things in Bitcoin, ETH, Monero, Xano, whatever, right? They become priced in that. Then you definitively know you've won. But as a store of value, it's like a nugget. It's like the 10, 15% of the win, but it's definitely not the we've won.
Yeah, I agree with you. I got into this space for the free market aspect. Ron Paul led me into it. You mentioned audit the Fed, or do they have the gold? So that led me down the Austrian. He led me to the Austrian school. So I agree with you 100%. And I just totally disagree with maximalists that think that the utility is wholly based on it being a store of value. It doesn't resonate with me at all. Do you think I mean, they're like the loudest voices, everywhere you go. It feels like the maximalists.
Yeah, I think they're the loudest voices because in an era where you don't yet have utility, store of value gives the most amount of like number go up, right? That's going to be the moneyness, right? The different properties of money, that's going to be the one that's the most powerful until you have utility. And since that's the most powerful right now, it's the one's going to make the news headlines, and the people that speak on that narrative are the ones that are going to get interviewed on, Fox and CBS News and MSNBC. They're the ones that are making all of the headlines because they're promoting that narrative, and it's the one that's currently succeeding, right? The narrative of Bitcoin as a payment method, the people that have been promoting that, and even the ones that are maxis that have been saying, hey, just use the Lightning Network, they're not really getting a lot of airtime because, well, that part of Bitcoin isn't really working, So, yeah, unfortunately, that's where we are, and so that's what's going to make the headlines, and therefore, those are going to be the quote loudest people because we've given them a mic and amplified their voice, and that's fair, right?
Right.
About money, people care about value, and that's what's making the value go up right now.
Yeah, if you want to talk about, you were talking about like the properties of good money earlier, and the arguably the worst property of Bitcoin is that you can see what's going on the blockchain. And I think you have a major problem with this as well. That definitely takes away from the greatness of the innovation. Do you think that it could actually become the first off, do you think the loudest voices would actually embrace doing like base layer transactions again if it could happen? Like, would they ever admit they were wrong about big blocks, or come to some sort of like agreement where you could scale Bitcoin on chain and not need the layer layer 2s or layer 3s? Because I just don't they haven't worked, so I'm curious what you think about that.
So they haven't worked has been specifically Lightning. I think Lightning is a terrible technology. I was a big fan of it, or at least the idea of it early on. I didn't quite know all of the shortcomings, but we've given it an honest try. We were about to integrate it into Edge, and ran into issues with the liquidity problem. Like, we can't send funds to this swap exchange, and that's one of Edge's primary pieces of functionality is allowing people to swap between different cryptos.
Mm-hmm.
And then, a channel would have to be open between the SDK provider that we were using and one of these swap exchanges. And there'd have to be enough liquidity in it. And so after studying it enough, I felt like it wasn't a good long-term solution, L2, but it didn't necessarily mean that L2s were dead in the water. Granted, it's always better when the L1 just takes care of everything. Don't get me wrong. That is a better user experience by far. And I think Solana has proven that, right? Its success is all about, we don't need L2s. User experience of L2s suck. We'll even take the compromise of saying, okay, it's going to be a very expensive node to run on Solana. Not many people are going to be able to do it, but hopefully enough can run a node such that you have the distributed censorship resistant properties. But of course, Solana doesn't provide much privacy. And so where I do think Bitcoin has hope, and I've said this a few times, I'm like, hey, Bitcoin's in a dangerous place from the viewpoint of accomplishing its true goals. But where it has that hope is with L2s that can accomplish two primary things. And if people can rally around two solutions, two L2s that provide two different solutions, I think Bitcoin could wipe out most other currencies. And I think, the people that resonate with me on certain other currencies will hate me saying this. Like I'm a big fan of Xano, I'm a big fan of Monero, Zcash, a lot of the privacy chains, and even the programmable ones like Solana and Ethereum. But if the Bitcoin community can pick a programmable, like an EVM L2, I think, was it Botanix just launched one. They went into mainnet a few weeks ago, if not a month ago. Alpin Labs is building one. Citria is building as well. Both those last two being ZK rollups. So if the community can rally around one, and then now we can get DeFi on Bitcoin, you can borrow, lend, swap various tokens, and then also build an L2 using the technology of like a Monero or a Zcash, so that we can actually send peer-to-peer privacy payments. I think we'd have really a complete package. There's not much else left needed, right? Where Bitcoin then becomes the L1, ironically, doesn't really get used, right?
Yeah.
It become the security layer for the L2s. And I have an interesting philosophy, depending on how those L2s are constructed, they might even make it such that the L1 isn't even needed. There goes something the maxes would really hate, right? If you think about it, if you're going to hodl your Bitcoin, and you want the security of Bitcoin, the security on the L1 is only going to go down as the L2s start to take all of the transaction fees, right? Because you're only getting fees on the L1 from mining if you're not actually creating transactions on the L1. And these other L2s are typically, they can't be mined, right? There's no way to create more Bitcoin on a different chain than the L1. So they'd probably be proof of stake. And over time, if the security budget on proof of stake starts to grow on these L2s, they can eclipse the security of the mining rewards on the L1. And at some point, maybe the L1 just goes away. And then you just have like a privacy L2,
Mm-hmm.
and then an EVM or like just some kind of programmable L2. And you can go back and forth between those two, right? Bridge your Bitcoin between those two different L2s. And then you kind of have everything that Bitcoin or crypto in general is trying to offer, right? And then you still have the store value narrative because you still have a fixed number of coins. And so that could be its hope. And that's really where I'm still excited about Bitcoin for those two kinds of L2s. But yeah, for now, we're not there. And it's store value. I still have mostly Bitcoin, right? But the point when I start to sense utilities becoming important for crypto, and if Bitcoin doesn't have a solution for that yet, that's when I think I would start to migrate most of what I own into something other than Bitcoin.
It is interesting that like Monero almost made a new all-time high this cycle. It didn't make one last cycle. So there might be some resurgence of privacy, people being interested in privacy going on right now. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think there is. I mean, I'm seeing more even traditional companies has privacy than they ever had. Like, just the past couple of years, Apple's had, I think, 4 ads entirely around privacy. I've been getting spammed by WhatsApp ads, that are showcasing that, oh, WhatsApp's private and it's closed source. We think it's private. It was originally a very private app and bought by Facebook. Who knows? That Elon Musk and X is claiming the DMs on X are now encrypted and private, and so there seems to be this resurgence, and that nothing makes me happier than seeing that. Like, this is awesome. Like, the fact that you reached out, you care about privacy. Hey, there's more people, and so this definitely is a key piece, and that's what we're banking on, because right now it's niche for us. Like, we don't have a huge user base compared to a lot of the non-private wallets out there. And our hope is when the masses start to go, oh, I care about privacy, it's really hard to take whatever infrastructure, your very public, transparent surveillance infrastructure, and then turn it private. That's hard. That's really hard to do. And so we'll be one of the ones that have been building, with privacy in mind from day one. And so we're obviously hoping when people start to care, this is where people go, right? Into the solutions that have been caring since, gosh, now it's 11 plus years.
Yeah, that's awesome. I found you guys very early on. I don't know what year I started using Edge, but it's probably been close to a decade. So I appreciate you. I appreciate your work.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been, I've never had a problem with Edge. This isn't like some paid, thing or anything, but yeah, I've loved the user experience. Super clean, look as well. I like the whole wallet. So you guys done a great job.
It changed a lot. If it was 10 years ago, it was Airbitz, and the UI has gone through, gosh, half a dozen, if not more, iterations over that time. It's weird looking back at old screenshots on my phone.
Oh,
your phone keeps your screenshots from way back, even after you upgrade. And look at these old screenshots of both Edge and Airbitz going, oh, that's right. That's what it looked like. Like seeing your baby grow, from
right. Yeah, I found it after it was Airbitz, I believe. I remember Airbitz, but I don't think I had the app until after. So
like it's still, Edge has still been around for a while. 2018 is when it launched publicly, and so that's running on like almost 7 years.
Yeah, the first project I worked on in crypto was privacy focused. So yeah, when I came across you I don't know how many years ago, and then using the app, and then I heard you speak, I was like, I got to talk to this guy. So I'm curious. Like, I know Edge is. Let's talk about Edge just a little bit more. I don't want to be respectful of your time. Maybe like another 10 minutes if you have it.
Sure.
I know Edge is end to end encrypted, right? And you guys are open source.
Yep, we are open source, so people can actually validate what we're doing.
I don't know if you're friends with Eric Voorhees, but you might have to reach out to him, because in preparation for this, I ran it through Venice, and it actually came back that you guys are close, that it's a closed source app. So I thought that was interesting. I know it's just something that I found interesting before we got on here, but
it's definitely not closed source. Everything's there on GitHub.
Yeah, I thought so. That's just something I found interesting.
Yeah, we have one server that is closed source, but then that's not the app, right?
Okay.
So the app itself is fully open source, and just like any app can access, like for example, the app accesses exchange rate data from like CoinMarketCap. That server is closed source. In the same sense, it might access one of our closed source servers as well. But many of our infrastructure actually is open source as well. Like 95% of our infra is all open source, including the app.
Okay, I just wanted to ask. I wanted to get it straight from the man himself, so I was just curious about that.
Yeah, admittedly, I'm the wrong person to get it straight from, in the sense that I'm biased. So for anyone that questions what I just said, please verify it yourself. Go to GitHub. You can actually build our app yourself if you want. Now, granted, you have all the API keys for things like exchange rates and swap providers, exchange partners. So you can build the app as is, but you probably will get you'll have some functionality
missing 35% or something.
Yeah, like you might not be able to access, like you need some API keys for like Ethereum API services. So you might not be able to sync Ethereum very well, but you'll definitely be able to send and receive Bitcoin just fine with the existing app as is on GitHub. If you build that yourself, you can send and receive Bitcoin. And so, yeah, I'm not sure where Venice gets that. I know that so one of the criticisms of Edge, I'm one of those like almost like painfully honest about our own shortcomings. One of the criticisms of Edge is that our open source code isn't what's called reproducible, in the sense that if you were to download our app from like the Play Store, right, that's just a file, right? There's this big zip file, called an APK. Mm-hmm. If someone were to try to build our app themselves, would it match the APK byte for byte? Like every bit and byte, would it match? No, it won't, right? And so that doesn't mean we're not open source. We're just not reproducible open source. And I'll happily tell your audience why that's hard to do is that, well, there are API keys inside of the app. We pay for services such as exchange rate services, CoinMarketCap, CoinGecko. We also pay for API services, like Infura, Etherscan. And with that, we put an API key in the app. Now, it's not impossible to extract the API key, but it's hard. And if you were to build the app yourself, you're not going to have the API keys. So therefore, that alone will make a difference in the app, right? So we're not going to be able to match because there's just no way to, given those API keys. They're just app secrets, right? And so is that a deal breaker to call something not open source? Fundamentally, I think no.
I would say no as well, yeah.
I would say no, but that might be, and because there's probably forum posts out there criticizing that aspect of Edge. But as well, there's, Bitcoin.org has listed us for the longest time. I think we're one of the few wallets on Bitcoin.org because we've been around for so long. And they put in, they only list open source wallets, right? And so to my recollection, they only list open source wallets, and they mentioned, that Edge is open source. So.
Oh, that's why I was asking you, because I was kind of shocked myself. I'm like,
yeah.
What is this,
I'm not sure what Venice is sourcing. I don't think it's, Eric Voorhees, and I do know Eric.
I don't think it would be Eric either. I like Eric.
I like him. It's just like, so one thing about AI, right? And not to go down another tangent and whatnot, is that while you can offer a service like he does with Venice, and we're talking to another group, Nano GPT, right, which offers an interface, and that way you can purchase AI chatbots, credits without having to provide email and personal information, whatnot. They provide the infra to query these agents, but none of them, because they're not gigantic behemoth top 5 companies in the world, none of them can train those AI engines and chatbots. So the training is just so super expensive that's in the hands of other organizations, Microsoft, Facebook, Meta, whatever you want to call them. And so the training data could easily be the thing that influences the answer of the chatbot. But it's definitely worth looking into. Thanks for letting me know, because I haven't asked that question of any AI, but I'll give it a shot on like ChatGPT, Grok. I've been using Grok mostly lately, although I'm interested in some of the alternatives that let me pay in crypto, so I don't have to like give up information.
That's awesome, man.
I'll ping them and see what these chatbots say. Maybe I can argue with it. Go, well, no, have you checked our GitHub repo? Have you checked the Edge GitHub repo?
Yeah, you might train it right there. Yeah, I wasn't like a gotcha thing or anything. I actually thought you might find that interesting as well. So I was like, I want to bring that up and ask him about that. Yeah, just real quick as we wrap up here, like I said, I'll be respectful of your time. Is there anything like coming down the road, coming up for you guys you want to mention before we get off here?
Coming up down the road, I mean, there's a few things that were coming down the road. And then we had launched. I think one of the things that has really received a lot of very positive feedback and a lot of fanfare is like our duress mode that we added, which is a feature that lets people have a secondary PIN that can log into a sub account. So if you're forced to unlock Edge, you can unlock a sub account that has far less money than your main account, right? But it looks the same, but you just enter a different PIN. And so that's one that definitely has been received very well with a lot of fanfare. And it's both a privacy measure and a security measure, right? So obviously it doesn't expose your funds. So some people do that even when they're not under duress. But if they want to, navigate and show someone the app and whatnot, so it's more of a privacy feature, but obviously it's a security feature in case you actually are under duress. So that's one of the things that recently launched. As far as stuff on the roadmap, a whole lot of just under the hood improvements I think most people won't notice. We're also really ramping up our support for fiat on and off ramp. I think we were the first wallet to actually integrate a fiat on and off ramp back in 2015. There was a company called Glidera. Their CEO of Glidera, he was a good friend. We worked with him super closely. I even spoke at his quote unquote graduation from the what's it called? The accelerator he did in Chicago. He had me on stage to present him. He is now the CEO of Kraken.
Oh, wow.
So David Ripley. So we worked closely with them to offer the first fiat on and off ramp integrated into a wallet. And since then, we've obviously integrated a whole bunch, but we want to really ramp that up, drive prices down, meaning that, make costs much lower for our user, we have an upcoming integration that's going to make OTC almost irrelevant. You can do $1 million transactions all from within Edge. Buy and sell various crypto assets, stable coins, Bitcoin, ETH, all from within the app with very low fees. We're going to be competitive even with Coinbase, at the consumer app level. And so that's coming in hot probably in the next few months. And possibly look for more privacy features. We're closely looking at network level privacy like NIM and Tor to integrate into the app to give people a higher level of privacy by default, where they don't even have to do anything. You just kind of get it. Right?
That would be great. Yeah. Real quick here. If you onboard with fiat, is that still your KYC free still, or is that
only in one jurisdiction, which is Europe? You can choose one of the payment methods, SEPA, right, which is a very common European bank transfer method. If you choose SEPA with, and it'll almost certainly default to one of our partners, Biddy. They've been around also since like 2015, 2016, long time. They don't require KYC in order to buy and sell up to, I think, 1,000 Swiss franc worth of, Bitcoin, crypto, and maybe a stable coin. Any other fiat method does require KYC. The important thing, though, is that we make very, very sure that the KYC you provide is only provided to the exchange, right? The exchange partner, and the exchange partner doesn't get any additional info about your account in Edge other than an address to buy the crypto with, or the transaction when you send them crypto if you're trying to sell, right? From that, they can do blockchain analytics if it's not a privacy coin. If it's a privacy coin, great, they can't. But otherwise, that info is strictly going to them. It doesn't go to Edge. No one at Edge can see any of that personal information at all. And the exchange, like if you're gonna go buy some Bitcoin, the exchange doesn't see any of your Ethereum addresses, doesn't see anything else in your Bitcoin wallet, because we're still old school HD where we rotate addresses. So the exchange gets one address. They don't see all the other ones that you already have. So it's not perfect, no KYC, but I like to tell people, if you're going to use a bank, you're already not no KYC. Even if the exchange doesn't ask for your information, the bank knows that you're sending money to an exchange, right? So they know you're buying crypto.
It is interesting how few people and wallets these days want to cycle the addresses like you mentioned. But
downhill, it's actually, I know one of our competitors had HD wallets and then they removed it, and then it seems like all of the newer wallets coming out don't have HD wallets anymore, and they just don't care about privacy at all. Not that it's perfect, but it's far better. It's like 10x better to do address rotation than to just have a static address.
For sure.
Then you're 100 times better if you're on an actual privacy coin like Monero. Then you actually don't need address rotation, right? It does it underneath the hood, with photography.
Paul, I really appreciate getting to pick your brain and hearing about your backstory today.
No problem. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, hang on one second. I'll say a proper goodbye. I wish you nothing but luck moving forward. Hopefully I can talk to you again in the future.
Absolutely. No problem.
Thanks.